Welcome, everybody. Thank you guys for joining. Welcome to another edition of Customer Connects. We're excited to have you guys here. My name is Michelle Kimmett. I am the Director of Customer Success, and I am really excited for this webinar. We have three special guests with us today. I really can't wait for you to learn from them. So Guy Yehiav is the president of SmartSense. He's going to be kicking us off here in a minute to review some exciting news about SmartSense and Jolt joining forces. We're then going to hear from one of our Jolt customers, Brian Witte with Cheba Hut, to learn about him and his organization. And then we'll be joined by Josh Bird. He is the founder of Jolt, and he's going to dig into how the impact that Jolt has had on Cheba Hut and their desired outcomes so that we can all kind of be educated on this great path moving forward. As always, please feel free to submit questions via the chat, and we will be sure that we get you some answers. So lots to cover today. With that, let's kick it off with Guy. Hi, Guy. Welcome.
Hey, Michelle. Hey, good seeing you.
Good to see you.
Thanks for having me in. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Customer Connect is very important to all of us, as you know. And by the way, another note, looking forward to see you all at live to talk about both this amazing acquisition, among other things that we have delivered to the market recently. So as you've probably read, last Monday, DG acquired Jolt in order to merge SmartSense and Jolt to extend our leadership in the market. The nice thing about it, besides the great technology that Jolt have and the amazing people that I've met, is that it complements us 100%. We do not have any single customer that use both. And so there's a lot of synergies between what we have been doing for the last decade. Every customer that I've spoken with from Jolt was very highly complimentary of the team, of the technology, of their customer success personnel, very similar to discussions I had with our customers. When you look at the different verticals, we serve, as you know, retail, grocery, obviously healthcare, retail pharmacy, pharmaceutical. We also have the K-12 and higher education solution, as well as now with the T1, we have a supply chain solution for both warehouse as well as the truck and transportation and logistics tracing capabilities. When you look at what Jolt have been doing, they focused on food and beverage, on convenience stores, on retail and entertainment, and also mainly starting from the bottom up, from a franchisee by franchisee base rather than enterprise, and then going down from a compliance and regulation perspective at all the franchisees. And so now that we join forces, we can do both. Depends on how a company wants to distribute and manage their risk on food safety. They can actually demand and ask the franchisee to go and partner with SmartSense and Jolt, or they can just say, hey, it's recommended, and then we will go franchisee by franchisee and implement our solutions, right? We are well known for real-time condition monitoring, our gateway, our cellulars, we have the sensor technology, we have the prescriptive analytics, the guidance. We now have a lot of machine learning algorithm, as you know, like the smart close and a lot of other great technology that we have built. We're now going to use all of that with what Jolt has been building up over the last decade. If you move to the next slide, we'll see what they've actually delivered on top of what we have. So from a label management, a lot of our customers were telling us, hey, when can you connect the workflow and the sensors with a printing label capabilities that is very custom made, robust, and configure actually based, so we can change the label almost on the fly with minimum work to put a colorful logo, the ingredients, the sell by, the eat by, and all the different permutation of attributes on a continuous basis. And so Jolt built it on top of Zebra printer devices. And as you may know, I have a really good background with Zebra. I've worked there with the management for 3 years. And so they were super excited to hear that we're now partnering with them through Jolt. And obviously they expect us to go and join their user conference and sponsor a few banners, which we're thinking about. But label management, is something that should be really excited to look at, connecting what we currently do with SmartSense customers, and on top of that with label management. From a sensors and probe perspective, they use some of the same probe that we use. Obviously, they didn't use up until now our probes, but that will be certified soon. And then they use also all the ThermoWorks probes that we use as well. If you look on their workflow is probably about 3 years ahead of what we have today and what we planned. And so a lot of capabilities are there to continue and maintain ours or migrate over to Jolt workflows. And then from a compliance perspective, they also have a full audit capabilities and new audit capabilities coming to market in October. So expects to see a new demo coming up, which is another area that a lot of our customers says, hey, SmartSense, when will you have a full audit capabilities to audit our stores, our franchisees, and all of our sites? And so instead of waiting for us to build it, the fact that we join forces, now we have it available for you tomorrow. Next slide. If you step back and you look at the markets, look at our customer base today. Join forces with Jolt allow us to serve much more, many more brands that are also great at scale on the food service and manufacturing, as well as on the C-store. We welcome back Racetrack, who used to be an all-time customer of ours. And obviously, there's some really, really nice logos there. I would just want to end with another note that we're looking to use the printing and label capabilities also in healthcare, retail, pharma, and pharmaceutical, where label making is so critical and you need to be able to configure them almost on the fly. And so we're going to test that with 1 or 2 customers. We already have a few customers that have called us to say that they're willing to test it with us, and maybe they will speak about it at live, about the success they've been having with Jolt and Zebra printers, as well as using our workflow, Jolt workflow, that is across warehouse, life sciences, and healthcare as well. With that, I'll hand it back to Michelle.
Thank you, Guy. I think we're all super excited to kind of see the superpowers that are ignited, right, by combining these two formidable forces. So really, really excited. So thank you for kicking us off. With that, I would like to introduce Brian Witte, the Senior VP of Operations with Cheba Hut. Hi, Brian. Did I say your last name right? Is it Witte or Witte?
It's Witte, but nobody ever says it correctly, but it's Witte.
Got it. Apologize. Welcome. Welcome to Customer Connects. We're so excited that you're here. I'll let you kind of jump right in and go through your slides, introduce us to you and your organization.
Yeah, as Michelle mentioned, I'm Brian Witte, SVP of Operations with Cheba Hut. I actually just celebrated my 4-year anniversary with the brand over the weekend here, so still feel like I'm relatively new on the journey as I'm getting reps here. I currently oversee supply chain, which encompasses food and beverage for us as programs, learning and development, new store opening, and franchise support. So compliance is definitely near and dear to my heart, whether it's brand standards or just the guardrails that keep our brand safe as we grow. Yeah, in a nutshell, I mean, there's a lot you can dig into in there, and I'm excited to talk about at a brand level why Jolt is huge for what we do. We recently expanded into our 19th state for operations. So we have 79 locations, which a lot of people don't know. We've been around for 27 years, but I kind of refer to us as a 27-year restaurant startup. That's really just hitting our stride now. Started way back in 1998 in Tempe, Arizona, as a place for our founder, Scott Jennings, to have a hangout for his friends and make food that they wanted to eat in an environment that they wanted to hang out in. And it's been the vibe that we've carried on ever since. 27 years later. We pay a lot of reverence to that. We have unique murals in every shop that really pay homage to the communities that we're in. We don't have a strict dress code. We are definitely cut from a little bit of a different cloth than a lot of our competitors out there, and it's a huge part of what makes us who we are. We have been with Jolt since approximately 2023 with some early adopters on our franchisee side. So I have previous experience with Jolt from other brands I've worked with, but one of our largest franchisees actually brought Jolt in a couple years ago, and it changed the game for them. And as we looked at the opportunities we have as a brand, it was a no-brainer to me to go back to something I was already familiar with and see how it could support this new brand that I'm stoked to work with now.
Fantastic. Love it. So I'm going to actually bring in Josh Bird now as well. Welcome, Josh. So I'll have some questions and I'll kind of start. I'm going to start with you, Brian. So before using Jolt, right, you guys obviously were growing very quickly. What challenges were you facing? What were you guys trying to solve?
Yeah, I think any restaurant out there feels some of these pain points daily. As we continue to grow and many of our franchisees are growing into multi-unit leadership, one of our biggest challenges is how do you see all of these pieces from a distance without having to physically be in your location? And the digitized task management piece and the reporting makes that seamless for us. It's just an incredible resource. The last thing you want to do is get a food safety complaint and have to dig through paper logbooks, and you hope that the manager has hit every single item every single day. You hope that they didn't spill something on the logbook and throw it away by mistake. So just the peace of mind when those critical compliance elements do pop up, because they will, is massive for us. Another big piece for us, most of our product is sitting in our refrigerated carts throughout the day. And when you pull those out and clean at night, or if God forbid, something goes down, the breaker trips, you're looking at $1,500, $2,000 of product you got to throw away the next morning, and you had no idea that happened. So we actually utilize the sensors as well. It's just, again, another peace of mind, piece of the equation, that you can be sitting at home and get that text message and get somebody out there to take care of a problem that you wouldn't have known happened otherwise. So really pulling all of those resources together in one place makes it so easy to understand at a glance how the operation is running. And the third really critical piece of that to tie it together for us was moving from paper resources to digital resources. So just like every other restaurant out there, we have our daily checklists, we have our cleaning routines, our maintenance lists. We felt like we were a little bit behind the times and antiquated using pen and paper, and it was just really time to move those to digital. And we're really excited at the opportunity to digitize things like recipe cards that we can now update on demand instead of having to print and pay and ship those out. We can make modifications on the fly. So the agility that we can respond to things like that in a digital world is just huge for us.
I love it. You said something, and I think Jolt and SmartSense, yeah, we have sensors, we have checklists, but what we're really selling is peace of mind, right? That's what we bring to our customers. So Josh, I'm curious, given the challenges that Brian kind of talked through, is this typical of what you hear from your other customers? Was this what you were trying to solve for when you originally created the incredible Jolt?
Oh, it absolutely is. So I was actually an operator myself for 8 years. I was a Baskin-Robbins franchisee, and everything you're saying, Brian, is what I remember dealing with as an operator myself. That was, back in the day, Jolt didn't exist when I was, looking for another solution, couldn't find what I needed. And that's really what was the blueprint for Jolt. And so it's really good to hear that's still helping today, all these years later. It's been about 13 years since I started it.
Nice. And I'm curious because there's another facet, and Guy kind of touched on it. It's the labeling side of things, right? How that touches into compliance. So Josh, kind of talk about how that came to fruition and filled that need.
Yeah, so kind of like Brian, I ended up with walk-ins dying. I had $20,000 worth of ice cream that all melted on me, literally New Year's Eve. That was a New Year's Eve I'll never forget.
Right.
And it was before we had sensors and all of that. And of course, once we installed sensors and we're able to monitor in real time, we never lost another piece of any more product. We lost refrigeration units, but we were able to save the product every time. But when it comes to labeling, that was another thing that I needed as an operator, because that's the only thing I got marked down on from a health inspector, right? So we had a couple health inspections as a Baskin-Robbins. It's a simpler operation, and so we never got marked down for anything but labeling. And some of my folks struggled to get things labeled appropriately. Honestly, as an operator, it took me about 5 minutes to get one of my employees to admit that unfortunately they had made up some dates, right? They couldn't keep track of it. There was this massive book of all of these dates, and every product had a certain amount of, this was 2 days, this was 3 days, this was 2 hours. It's just hard to keep track of everything. And as we would get them to label, I would say, how did you know it was that many days? And they wouldn't know. And so I figured, hey, if I could get them to admit in 5 minutes that they had marked that label incorrectly, it probably wouldn't take a health inspector too long to do it as well. And then, of course, too often they were missing the label to begin with. And so sure, we got marked down a couple of times, and that was it. I said, hey, I've got to have labeling. I need to save my product with sensors, and I need to save my reputation and liability with labeling. So that's where that came from. And then, of course, Guy already mentioned it, but I needed it to be flexible, and I needed it to, and so funny enough, we sort of started off with sort of the standard McDonald's type label that you've always seen. If you go to the drink station, you see kind of the little white label that says the sweet tea was prepped by this person, and on this date and time, and it expires this date and time, and and the product name and all of that. But so we sort of started with that, but from inception, we said, hey, other brands are going to need other things, so we wanted to make it very flexible. So kind of to Guy's point, at this point, we do cake labels for Dairy Queen, or we do, it doesn't matter what the solution is. We print 1 million labels a day for Casey's, right? Over 1 million labels per day for all of their products, right? So, sort of any brand, anything, I wanted it to make sure we could be flexible for anything print on demand, anything that, because it is hard to keep track of all the different types of dates. So anyway, that's where it came from.
There's so many pieces and parts when you're an operator, right? It's, they got HR, we've got, employees, operations, all that good stuff. So I love when people can figure out there's a need, I needed it, other people are going to need it too. So it's fantastic.
Our folks with as much time as possible to help the customer and not worry about trying to keep track of dates.
Right. And we see that on both sides, right? Whether it's healthcare, they want to be in front of patients, or, I'm a restaurant operator, I want to be taking care of my customers. So Brian, I'm going to jump back to you. What are some of the results you've seen since you started using Jolt, like time save, cost reduction? What kind of KPI things have you started seeing on ROI?
Yeah, so time savings, I'm going to estimate that we're saving easily at least 90 minutes a day in our company store, just between really how we've been able to digitize the checklists. What we've been able to do with the process is take what we had on paper, and we've actually used the resource with the ease of modifying it to break it up even more succinctly by position, and not just like, here's your ready for revenue checklist. Well, if I'm on register, I know when I come in now, here's the register version of this, without having to have another print resource hanging somewhere on a clipboard that you don't have the wall space for. So breaking that task management apart into even more common sense roles has just really streamlined the ability for our operators to get in the shop and really say, hey, I know if I'm on register, this is what I do today. If I'm on meat cart, I do this. And it just removes the guesswork, because at the end of the day, people don't like going in and just choosing a task on a list. It's just too ambiguous, right? Like, it's nice to come in and know what I'm responsible for. It's easier for the leader to not have to delegate the same thing time and time again. And you feel more proficient as the crew coming in and understanding, like, this is what I own. I take pride in that. So we've seen some good savings there. I would also agree with the sentiment that we have not lost product in one of our shops using sensors since we implemented them. And again, you might hit some unlucky patches when you're training some new employees who don't realize that they pulled that plug out just 1/4 of an inch from the wall, and it's just not enough to keep that thing running. And it breaks your heart to walk in at 6 o'clock in the morning to run the prep shift and throw away all that product. Now you got to work twice as hard, and you just lost that money. And another piece that I'm really excited about, we're not currently using the labels from Jolt, but I have used them in the past, and I'm looking forward to getting some into our company stores. It's the streamlining of the process to the point where we have a pretty robust prep list. We do all of our sauces are actually like small batch made daily. We still prep almost our entire menu as far as proteins. Almost all of our veggies are sliced daily as well. It can be onerous even to go in and have to work with a label maker, and I have to punch in the number of labels every single time. It's just so much easier to be able to pop your prep list in, update your pars, and it's going to print me seven labels for lettuce because I have 7 pans of lettuce on my prep list. So really excited about the opportunity there. And again, for Jolt, it's been relatively easy to get that buy-in from the franchise side. As a brand, our culture, our brand is marijuana themed, if you're not familiar with Cheba Hut. So it has the perception of being laid back, even though we take it really seriously, right? So mandating programs has been challenging for us historically, but this is one that we feel really confident in mandating because of the compliance piece being so crucial to what we do. And our franchisees have been nothing but positive in reception to it so far. So the ease is definitely there. And again, it's just taking, to your point just a moment ago, Michelle, when process just works, you have more time to spend with guests and focusing on hospitality. And that's at the core of everything we do. Nobody's super excited to print a label, but they do get excited to go out and interface with the guests and talk about how they just had the best sandwich they've ever had, ask about ingredients, talk about the t-shirt they're wearing, all the things that make a unique experience unique to your brand. And this lets us focus on that more and more.
Well, and again, you're a growing brand, right? You have corporate stores and franchise stores. How do you get that consistency across the brand too? The checklist helps with that. And then, like you said, breaking up those tasks drives, your employee happiness, right? We all are having a hard time keeping employees, and people are moving from jobs around a lot. If it's one less thing they have to worry about, and they know they're coming in and doing a fantastic job, and they know exactly what they need to do, people like that tend to stick around. And those are the folks you want to have. Josh, anything to add on that with kind of the perspective you've heard from other customers in terms of where the big ROI has been for them? Sounds like probably pretty consistent, but.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's always the goal to have consistency, and it's hard with paper. Brian, when you were talking, I thought of an early experience I had. I walked into this restaurant. I won't name the brand. I'm not going to throw them under the bus. But I said, hey, what do you use for operations? And they literally said, oh, we use the brain. And so I was like, wow, this is going to be great. And they walked me back, and there was, as you can all imagine, there was the walk-in, and there was 4 clipboards on there, and it said the brain above it. And I said, well, how intelligent is this brain? And they said, it's dumb as rocks. And I also remember walking into another very well-known brand, and I asked the operator there, I said, hey, what are you doing for operations? And she took this paper book, again, I won't throw it under the bus, but we all know what I'm talking about. She took the management book and she slammed it on the counter. She goes, this is what I use and I want to burn it. Both of these were paper-based systems. Both of them were different brands completely, but they all had the same problem. They thought it wasn't good enough. And the thing that I love about joining the SmartSense family is we've always, and I literally mean this, we've always called our checklist smart lists, right? We've always talked about an intelligent list, right? Something that is dynamic. The reason our lists are so robust is there's different things that need to happen based off different rotations and different situations and all of that. And I think that the thing you're talking about, Brian, is people relate to how adaptable ours is. The last thing I'll kind of share, as a franchisee, I get a call from my manager, and I still remember being in the grocery store, and I'm just pushing the cart along, and my wife and kids are throwing stuff in the cart, and I'm just there to push the cart. And my manager calls me up and she says, hey, our operations manager from corporate just stopped by. He wrote us up for something he's never mentioned before. And I said, well, what was this? And I'll never forget, it was the pendant lights, right? The pendant lights over each of our tables. And he had said, hey, they were dusty, they weren't appropriately cleaned. And it's a minor thing, right? It's not a health thing, but it was an operations thing that I needed to address. And we had a score that I didn't want because of that. I'm not kidding. I got on my phone, I added that to one of our lists. And by the time I got to into the aisle, it was fixed and I never got written up for it again, right? I mean, I didn't leave that grocery aisle and I had already solved my problem, right? So it's a simple thing. There's much bigger problems we've solved with Jolt, but that's always a thing that stood out to me, is I didn't have to even leave that same aisle and I had already fixed my problem forever.
Well, it's, case in point, especially in the restaurant industry, speed of service, right? How quickly can I get things backing up? So that makes perfect sense. And I love that story. That's awesome.
And, the other thing is, managers, we love to repeat ourselves. We love to babysit people. I'm kidding. But, I think that's the other thing that people talk about all the time, is how much less they have to repeat themselves and how much less they have to babysit. Because with Jolt and with your employees using it, they just feel empowered, right? They're not feeling like they're being micromanaged or anything like that. They have the power at their hands, the tools at their fingertips, if you will, to go do everything. And they don't need a manager telling them or an assistant manager telling them, what to do. So one of the things that we've always said is Jolt's sort of the best assistant manager you've ever had, right? It's just 24/7, always there, helping your team feel empowered. I mean, that's what a good manager does, is empowers the team, right? So that's our goal with Jolt, is as you get the systems built in, as you add the different items, as situations come up, especially from a corporate standpoint, one button press, all your franchisees, all your corporate stores, they all have that change, and you never have to worry about that problem again.
Yeah, and you don't have to remember who did I tell, who did I not tell, right? As compliance changes.
No games of telephone, no weird translations,
right?
No losing it if you have turnover, none of that stuff.
It's genius. Okay, Brian, I'm gonna come back to you. Last question I have, and then we'll open it up to the audience. What tips would you give to others when they're looking to roll out a solution like Jolt or SmartSense? What kind of tips would you give on the search process and the implementation process?
Yeah, it's a great question. So perfection is like everybody's lofty goal, right? Especially in restaurants, it's challenging because we don't live in a perfect world. One of your key holders is going to call off at the worst possible moment. Your GM is going to be pulling a 16-hour shift and be stressed beyond belief, and they're going to drop some balls in the air. So what we did is we really broke it down by what are the non-negotiables as we're rolling into this, because even if you're trying to translate a program, it's not going to be one-to-one. The paper is never, the goal is not for it to replicate the paper program perfectly. It's to make it better and have a new iteration of it. So where we started, and again, I'm not saying we're perfect. We have opportunities as well, but for us, it's our line checks, our temp logs. They're non-negotiable because that protects the business first and foremost. I can tell if you clean the restaurant whether or not you've completed that checklist by doing my shop walk. But I care deeply about that temp log as a first line of defense for the brand. So we really started by just reinforcing that this is a 100% expectation of completion. That is a non-negotiable. It's easy to follow up on. It's easy to coach down. Again, having that visibility from a distance across multiple locations, and then just coaching it from there. We've been able to use the resources and the trackability of it to really build it into our KPI tool set, where it's always been part of our internal evaluation process that you have to do this, of course. But now in our company stores, it's part of their KPIs right there next to their COGS and their labor. It's the expectation of you're going to have this percentage of 95% of your checklist completed. 100% of that is your line checks. If you're missing 5% of that, I can coach that, right? If it's, again, sweeping, general cleanliness, R&M, we can coach that. I can't save you from a foodborne illness issue that you're creating in the restaurant. And so that is a non-negotiable. So it's understanding what's important and how you're going to cascade that immediately across your organization. But also, if you're working in an organization that does franchise like we do, one of the challenges is buy-in when you're using that ugly mandate word, because what people will see initially if you don't line it out correctly is expense and additional process, and what are we gonna have to do to set this up? So for us, one of the things I've really appreciated about working with Jolt and the support team is what I identified early on was our desire to mandate it, but we want to be able to test this thoroughly and roll it out. And when I roll it to the entire system, we've been doing it strategically over the last couple months, but I want it to be as good as it can possibly be based on the resources we're putting into it on day one. So when people use it, they might have feedback on what they'd like to see in the lists, but 90% of that it's there. It's what they need it to be on day one. And then it's easy to make modifications. So again, understand step one, what are your non-negotiables when you're moving into it? Is it hard compliance on things like food safety where you may have gaps already? Is it reinforcing a system that's already strong? And how do you not unintentionally weaken that if you're not communicating how to effectively use the tool? So making sure you deputize people within your shops to kind of be the subject matter expert also goes a long way with that. And what we've done is we have one of our HQ trainers who really kind of owns the day-to-day creation of resources, follow through with franchisees. But then when they go out in shops and they're doing evaluations or they're doing new store openings, they're the ones who are training it down and leaving that store knowing that at least one person, whether it's a GM, an AGM, or a shift lead, is kind of that resident expert for the system. And always an owner as well. If we can get the owner and one of the employees in there, just knowing who is going to run that resource every single day, who really owns the follow through on it. Because it's great to have that joint accountability, but at the end of the day, who's following through on the results, who's giving the feedback, structure does make a big difference. But again, it's the non-negotiables, the structured piece of it, but then understanding where your goal is to get to as well. Like, how can we utilize this to not just recreate what we're doing in a better way, but how do we enhance and add different parts of the program? So I'm really excited to hear about the evaluation piece of it. Because as I already mentioned, we do internal evaluations. We don't have third-party audits right now, which is a pretty big resource suck for us. So anything we can do to lighten that load is huge. So I was very excited to see that there's going to be the capacity to potentially roll that into Jolt and get it off of a spreadsheet and make it even easier to make those new iterations of our field evaluation as well. So I know it's a little bit of a meandering answer, but again, know what's important to you, communicate it at a high level. And if you're rolling something like this out, really communicate how it's going to make people's lives better before you focus on anything else, because that's what matters.
We need to know the why. Why are we doing this, right?
Yeah.
Yep, we're setting you up for success. There's always the change management growing pains. So a couple questions have come in for you, Eric, and I think some of these you kind of touched on, so maybe we'll dig a little bit deeper. The first one was, did you get a lot of resistance from your stores, and I'm seeing franchisees, when learning and using Jolt? Did you have to overcome that? And you kind of answered that you had a plan in place of how you're going to implement, but what were some of the common concerns you were hearing?
So I think being too quick to roll into things like this is part of the pain point. Oftentimes you'll bring in a new SaaS product and people will think, oh, we're going to have 60-day rollout. Some might say maybe I'm too cautious, but it was really important to me to be able to measure this and say we're We're going to attempt to bring our entire system on in 6 months. My goal was to have 1 year full ramp as we're bringing on new store openings too, to get people comfortable with it. Because if I can get people in a restaurant and access to it, that makes it easier to adopt because I'm getting their feedback in real time. It doesn't feel like I'm just telling you this is better because I said so. You know, it's actually bringing franchisees into one of our company stores in Fort Collins or Arizona or Wyoming and pick up the iPad. You know, I'm not gonna give you any instruction to start. I want to see how intuitive this is for you to pick this up and just run through it. And I'm not going to stumble if they don't pick it up, but 9 times out of 10 they pick it up and they're like, wow, this really is it's a familiar process. It's just on an iPad. And we had a plethora of, so for us it actually was even easier because we were going through a POS change at the same time. So we had an abundance of technology that franchisees were concerned about. What am I going to do with all these iPads? Well, let me tell you, I have a great opportunity here for you to upcycle those and not just use our learning management system, but now you can use this resource. So if you can be strategic with some of the technology you're already leveraging, it makes it a lot easier. But treat your franchisees as partners in the process, especially if you're looking to mandate. I love the idea of like, you know, kind of like a soft mandate to start is what I call it, where it is really that exploratory phase. You know, do you feel like this is making it better? Do you feel like we've overcomplicated parts of it? Do you actually like the changes we've made to these positional checklists? Or is this better in theory than in practice? And all of that matters. And it might not be, you know, universal that everybody feels the same way about it, but you can take that and you can actually make the program better and increase that buy-in as you make the product better in the process too. So consensus, you know, you don't need consensus, but you do need feedback.
I had a really great mentor who talked about people won't break down what they help build, right? So if you have them, they're building that up, they're part of the process, then they get that buy-in. And I think you talked about previously having kind of that subject matter expert in your trainer. A lot of the SmartSense, especially in the retail side, having one person that owns food safety at a retail location, and then they kind of help everyone understand the part they play in it so that they understand the why, right? It's so critical. Mm-hmm. I know you talked about metrics. You said you think you're saving about 90 minutes a day, which is huge, right? That's incredible. Any other metrics in terms, I mean, you said you haven't had product loss. Obviously that would be one. Any other metrics that you guys kind of track that you think maybe, you know, using Jolt has had an effect on?
It's tough to quantify a few of them yet as we're still testing right now. One I'm really looking forward to is that digital recipe card piece of it. Because again, if we're doing an LTO, it's great to be able to upload those to our digital training platform. In theory, it's fine to auto ship a bunch of recipe cards out there, but at some point you're going to have a typo or there's going to be an issue in printing that doesn't get caught in the pre-pro, and you're going to spend double on sending some of those things out. So I'm looking forward to saving thousands of dollars a year on recipe cards, but also just digitizing the kitchen stack even more, because for us as a brand, you know, we are a little bit resistant to things like kiosks because part of our DNA is what we call the interaction, not the transaction. Yeah. It is hospitality at the core. It's the experience of talking to the person at the register and talking about the art in the shop. So if we can digitize things behind the line, it's almost unquantifiable, the intangible savings to protecting the culture in the front of house by digitizing processes in the back of the house. I know it's not as specific as you probably like that to be, but for us, that's invaluable from a culture standpoint, where we can protect the core experience and make the crew's life better. Because the two marching orders that I have for all of my ops team are, you know, does this impact the customer experience? Is it better? That's the goal, is to always make it better. Does this impact or improve the crew experience? That's the other goal. You have to feed both of those at the same time if you really want to win. And ultimately, again, we'll be able to actualize more of the ROI as we continue to roll this into stores. But just the opportunity to continue to offload some of these physical costs that are also creating that brain in the restaurant that's no good. It frees up space for things like new art or new resources that we can put on the wall, things that actually matter, and removing the clipboard that doesn't look great for the customer. You know, it has that cultural value to the customer as well, because everybody can see, like, you have 5 clipboards right behind your line. Like, what are you doing with those? That's so ugly. And it is counter to what you're trying to build.
100%. And you brought up LTOs. That's such a good example, right? You have to pivot quickly. There's a lot of training, but now that it's digitized, we know LTOs sometimes come around. They're seasonal. We do the same one, or we do a tweak. Now it's in there and we just make that little bit of a tweak and you're ready to roll as soon as it needs to come out. So that's a great example. Just a comment that's come in. I'll come right back to you, Josh. They want to say cool guitar in the background. I know we talked about this before we jumped on the call, but you've already been recruited for the live band. So welcome to the SmartSense. I don't know if you heard the name yet, but it is Cover Your Assets is the name of the band.
That's awesome.
So you are now an indoctrined member. Welcome. Josh, I said, it looks like you wanted to add on to what we were talking about.
I was just going to mention that, you know, when it comes to the POP and the LTOs, you know, a lot of our customers will use that actually from a corporate standpoint to make sure that all of your POP material is up during the correct windows, down during the correct windows, right? They want to make sure, and you don't have to travel to all your stores. And so using our list with a POP or an LTO type list allows you to see photos, real-time, you know, evidence that things are being done correctly. And the other thing I wanted to hit real quick, Brian, is I love that you recognize the value of even something as simple as using our information library to distribute recipe cards. As a customer, again, I won't throw it, this is a different brand than I've even talked about, another brand. I remember being in there ordering an LTO. The guy is behind, he's flipping through the recipe tree. You can tell he could not find the recipe card. He makes a drink, it was horrible, and I never go back, right? We've all heard of those situations, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things as a Baskin-Robbins franchisee I experienced personally on the operations side is I would have a FedEx and a UPS envelope show up on the same day, each with a different recipe card. And I just thought, man, the inefficiencies of physically shipping these recipe cards is horrible. But to your point, I still remember two issues. One was they literally had the recipe wrong because I had just been to the corporate training. I knew how it was. I called up to Navigators, our help desk, and I said, hey, can you send out a new recipe card? This one's wrong. And they said it would cost us $60,000. When I was on the phone, they said $60,000 to republish and redistribute that one card. So can you just get out a Sharpie? Those were the exact words from the help desk. Not what you want to have when you're looking for consistency, obviously. So I thought to myself, how many people are going to call in and figure out to get a Sharpie, or are we just going to have inconsistency as a brand, right? And so you don't want that. And then the other recipe card, situation is I literally had a shake and a scoop recipe printed on the same card. You have different sections in the book. How are you going to do that? And so, it just leads to them not finding the card, which is probably what happened to that other brand as well. So again, it just, there's so many ways to leverage it to save real physical costs on top of saving all of your products and all that. But even just from an operations standpoint, reducing the cost. If you have, if you do publish a recipe card that has a typo, it takes you 3 seconds to hit the button and redistribute it immediately to all your locations. And you're not asking them, are they using the correct version or anything like that? The old one's just
There's
gone.
one version.
There's only one version.
Yeah, and if I may, actually didn't hit on the info library probably as hard as I should have because the recipe cards are part of that. But what I actually love about the information library is one of the pieces that was key and critical that our early adopters actually were not utilizing. That to me was a non-negotiable as we mandate it. We had to go back and I had to compel those guys that we're going to add this, but you don't know why you need it. So now when you're doing your product quality checklist, we have the images of what the ideal product looks like embedded in there. So it's not just a daily checklist, it's also a training aid. If you're new and this is the third time you've done a line check on your own, you can click on the information toggle and you can see a picture of what perfect gold chicken looks like. You can see what a perfect 6-tub hot well looks like when the product is filled to the fill line, when it looks ideal right before you set your lineup. And it can ask you, does this look like what your product looks like? If no, please take a picture. And then I can look at that from a brand level and say, like, what does this mirror any kind of customer feedback we've received about a specific protein? Is this an issue system-wide, or is it a training opportunity with one franchise group or one market? And just the power you get by being able to strategically put photos in that library as a training aid is massive. And when you can use that to make basically a ladder of decisions that people can vet with yes or no, it just really empowers them to understand quality of product, to feel compelled to be honest about it instead of just checking a box in a logbook. And then for DMs and multi-unit leaders to really have access to that information. And again, you're proactively training it. You're not responding to a lagging indicator of feedback. You already knew there was an issue, and now you can see it, and then you can speak to it.
Yeah, make sure that there's not, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you, Josh, but that there's not we'll keep going back and forth, that there's not issues that you go unsolved, right? They have visibility.
Yeah.
I love that closed loop process. And you've been talking about training, which is something near and dear to my heart. I got to believe your trainer loves that. Here it is. It's the same for everyone. And you get employees onboarded faster so that they're doing exactly what you want to do, taking care of customers. So it's fantastic. I'm loving hearing all these great stories. Anything else you guys want to add?
I want to make sure I shout out the support process with Jolt has been phenomenal. It's never been just like a hard sell to add products, because again, I was very clear up front that I'm interested in things like the label printer, but to me, compliance it's a journey to get people on board and fully understand how this protects you and doesn't just add rules is impactful. And so for the team to understand our unique needs and not just pushing us for full adoption in a 90-day window is huge, because you don't see that with every partnership. And I think I start every relationship with, we build a relationship first because I'm interested in the product. That's why we're speaking. But I'm interested in a strong relationship and a partnership, more importantly, because I want to be able to advocate for products that I love. It's not just about solving my problem. I want to help other people solve their problems too, but I have to believe in the process, and we have to believe in the partnerships that help us strengthen our system and our brand before we ever worry about bringing on more products or how soon we're going to mandate it. It just has to work. And it's something that the team over at Jolt has definitely understood and listened to from day one with us.
I think that's one of the common things, as I've been kind of watching this come together, that SmartSense and Jolt have figured out, right? It's that relationship building. It's the customer comes first, knowing everyone's got a unique desired outcome. How do we accomplish that? Excited to see how that, I'm calling it the superpower, right? As we combine forces here. But Josh, anything else, closing thoughts from you?
No, this has been great. Really appreciate the time, Brian.
Yes, thank you, Brian. This was
It's a pleasure to be
fantastic.
here. I appreciate the opportunity.
I have one last closing thought, and Guy kind of touched on it, and we've been talking about the band here for live. So for those of you that don't know, we do have a customer event called Live. It is this October, and it is going to be in Nashville. And it's really going to be kind of the marriage ceremony of Jolt and SmartSense coming together. So the Live 25 agenda is really robust. We're talking about innovation. It's a great way to learn and share best practices. How is someone using this? I didn't even think I could do that, right? Whatever that may be. But it also networking with industry peers. And then we also open up our books and we look at the roadmap. What new features do you need to continue to grow and stay compliant, drive efficiencies within your organization? So we encourage everyone, check it out. Come join us at Live in Nashville. And with that, thank you guys so much for joining us on Customer Connects.
We'll see you all live.
Absolutely. Thanks, you guys.